What's going on, everyone? Dottz Gaming here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over the top 5 things I am worried about for WoW Shadowlands. While in my previous video, I did go over the top 5 things I am excited for, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are definitely some things I do have some concerns about, and I want to cover those in today's video. But I am curious to hear from you guys. What is the big ticket thing you're nervous for in WoW Shadowlands? Let me know in the comments section below. But before we get into this video, guys, I do just want to thank today's sponsor, Ewin Racing. I've been using an Ewin Racing gaming chair for my stream setup for a long time now, and I absolutely love it. It's got all the things you would expect from your gaming chair. It's got a lumbar pillow, it's got a neck support. You are able to move the back up and down. Of course, you are able to ascend and descend with an arm on the side of the chair, and you are also able to move and adjust the angle of the armrest, which can be really handy depending on where you have your mouse positioned. The build quality of the chair is really good. It's extremely comfortable, and I'm able to sit in this thing for hours with absolutely no issue. If you want to pick up a chair for yourself, I personally have the Champion model. You're able to go onto Ewin's website and shop their current available listings. They have some current deals and ongoings on their homepage. You can then look at their list of gaming chairs as well as their new line of gaming desks and find some specials of what they have on for sale. You can pick anything up from their store for 30% off using code DOTTS at checkout and clicking the link in the description below. Now that we are back from the ad break, let's get into this top 5 list. So to kick off my list, we're going to start with my number 1 thing, and that is honor gear viability. So one of the biggest issues I have seen on the beta is that the honor gear from the PvP vendors is nothing short of horrific. It is not very good in terms of its eye level. It's extremely weak, even fully upgraded, because the way that the gear is going to work is that you can buy a base piece, and then the more honor you earn, you can actually upgrade the piece to make it better. And while in theory that does sound great, in practice it isn't as good. Not only just because the pieces are really low in eye level, I believe they're below like normal raid quality gear. It's pretty bad. It also takes a ludicrously high amount of battleground victories to even get the full set completely unlocked and upgraded. It will be a long grind, and you know, spending all the time sitting there grinding out BGs, getting your honor gear, your time would be better spent, unfortunately, getting gear through other methods. And you know, I was really excited for the honor gear vendor to come back, simply because one of my favorite parts of the initial grind for gear in an expansion was running BGs to get gear and to start gearing my character through battlegrounds. But unfortunately, the current iteration of the honor gear just does not stack up. I would really like for them to further lower the amount of battlegrounds you need to you know, win in order to get the actual full honor gear upgraded and ready to go. I think just based off of the old systems, the old timing, maybe back from like Warlords of Draenor era, would be really good in terms of how long it should take you to acquire your full set. And then I do think they need to upgrade the eye level a little bit more. Obviously the gear shouldn't be amazing. I mean, you're going to be wanting to replace it with conquest gear, obviously, as you progress and further gear up your character. But in the current version of, you know, in its current iteration and in its current form, the gear is just too weak, honestly, and it's not even very much worth it. So I just think that they can make a couple improvements on it, and it'd feel good again to have the honor gear vendor back. So that is my number 1. My number 2 thing is the Covenant and Conduit restrictions. Now, I did cover this in a previous video. If you want a full in-depth discussions, it was about the Conduit restrictions specifically and just systematic bloat on Shadowlands, and that is one of the things I am obviously concerned about. The current Covenant system and Conduit system, especially Covenants, has players feel like they're taking a risk and maybe locking themselves into the wrong choice by committing to a Covenant with their specific skills and soul binds. And you know, players now sometimes even need to choose between cosmetics and power. Like, for example, you know, I am going to be joining Maldraxxus on my druid because for feral PvP, I do believe it is going to be the best choice. But in terms of cosmetics, they are not my favorite, but I'm having to forego those things in order to get the player power that I want. Top of that, systems like the Conduit energy are just unnecessary and serve only to restrict players in customizing their characters and just cause unnecessary systematic bloat. I think it would just be better to let players freely choose and change their conduits like essences, and they, in my opinion, I am obviously a big fan of pull the ripcord, and I think they should add a font of power type of deal for covenant skills and soul binds. That's just what I've been calling it, where, you know, you could go and interact with this font and embrace the power or the essence or whatever lore words you want to use of a specific covenant and soul bind, and be able to, let's say, be attuned to Maldraxxus or be in touch with Venthyr, you know, however you want to word it, and then just leave the rest of the covenant system intact and let it be that way. But I think maybe having that type of deal will allow people to freely be like, okay, I want to use the Maldraxxus skills today, or I want to use the Night Phase skills, or I want to use this, or I want to use that, as opposed to locking people in. Realistically, do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. Obviously, in a perfect ideal world, it wouldn't make a difference because everything would be perfectly balanced, but we all know that that probably isn't going to be the case. But we'll have to see. I'm not going to be so bent up and out of shape if this doesn't happen, but it is something I am worried for that can potentially cause some problems. And speaking of the balancing and tuning, that is my third point. I would arguably say this is my biggest concern, and that is the delicate balancing and tuning that is going to be that whole situation that is just Shadowlands. Shadowlands as an expansion, I think, will live and die by its balancing and tuning. And the reason that I think that is because there is a lot of interlocking systems, from covenants to soulbinds to conduits to legendaries to your own class and talents to honor talents. There's a lot of things that contribute to a character build. Now, while I am actually a fan of that, because the previous MMO that I played had a lot of things that contributed to a character build, so I like having these different aspects where you can customize them in a lot of different areas. Because Blizzard has these artificial time gating and restrictions on a lot of these systems, you do run the risk of locking yourself into a choice, and if it gets nerfed, you're being SOL, and it does, I think, limit the amount of experimentation that you can try out. You know, you're basically locked out of maybe testing a for fun build, right? Maybe there's a fun build you want to test out, but you're really not able to because it'll lock you out of your more meta build, which you need to use for a raid later in the week. You know what I'm saying? So it just, I think there's a lot of delicacy behind the balancing and tuning, and with all these interlocking systems, I do believe that that is going to be the biggest crux of what makes Shadowlands a successful expansion or not, and that is why I am very happy that they did decide to delay the game. Just because this stuff seriously needed some working, you know, especially when I've been talking about the PvP trinkets, PvE trinkets, honor gear viability, all of these different things is all related to tuning, even just outside of classes. So, you know, I'm really glad they took the extra time, and hopefully they got it as right as they physically could. The fourth thing I am nervous for is the Maw. Now, maybe I just don't know enough about the Maw, but as far as I can tell, it seems a little bit unfinished and kind of boring. It just seems like a big wide open zone where you just grind for a lot of Stygia. You know, there's a lot of open space. You can't mount. It's mandatory to go there to farm sockets. Unfortunately, it reminds me of Echo farming from 8.3, and I'm not super excited about this. This was an area where they touted like, oh, you can go to the Maw, and it seemed so cool and so, you know, like, oh man, what is this place going to be at first? And then from the footage I've seen on beta of people actually going there and testing it out and looking at the systems, it just doesn't really seem all that interesting. So I hope that this is fleshed out a little bit more. Maybe I'm just not up to date on this, but I do hope that this gets fleshed out a little bit more before release, so that it is a little bit more exciting of a place to be. And then my final thing is Shadowlands Alt Friendliness. Now, the reason I have this on my list is because I don't necessarily know how alt-friendly Shadowlands is going to be. I have talked to some people who think Shadowlands is going to be ridiculously alt-friendly. Many people think it's not going to be alt-friendly at all, and I'm not sure where I truly stand on it, so it is something that I am concerned about a little bit, because PFA was one of the least alt-friendly expansions, and something that I personally am hoping for is that with a lot of the power grinding systems in Shadowlands being capped, it'll actually allow for people to play alts, because there isn't, you know, tons and tons of chores that you need to do on a weekly basis. Once you have, you know, your conduits and your soulbind is grinded up through the Covenant campaign. They're going to be doing catch-up mechanics from day one, as far as I know. My hope is that when we get a little bit into the expansion and people want to start actually going into alts, they won't feel like, oh my god, I have all these things I have to do on this character, and the thought of doing all these things multiple times a week just feels like such a steep hill to climb, like it was in BFA. You know, I feel like once we're going to get going, the amount of things that we must do weekly seems like it's going to be a little bit reasonable. And so I think it should make it a little bit easier to make alts in Shadowlands compared to how it was in BFA. But I think the catch-up mechanics from day one will help, and you know, there not being a lot of on the chore front will make it so that we could actually play alts and level them up and actually enjoy multiple characters. And I do think that it will take time, though, to kind of get into the X-Pack a little bit once you have your main's Covenant campaign and all that stuff worked on, because you, of course, want to make sure your main is as up-to-date as possible. But I think, guys, that is my top 5 list for things that I am worried about in Shadowlands. Let me know what you guys think, though. What is the biggest thing you're worried for in Shadowlands? What is your biggest concern? I'd say of these 5 things, for me, number 1 concern is the delicate balancing and tuning. You know, while I do, in a way, want them to pull the ripcord and be able to just use whatever Covenant stuff I want, I understand that they do have a vision and a feeling for wanting the Covenants to feel like a subclass to your spec, so I can understand that perspective. But the only way that that'll really work and not feel terrible is if the balancing and tuning is done appropriately. So I am hoping for the best. But like I said, if you guys did like this video, smack a like on it, leave the comment below, let me know what you're concerned about in Shadowlands, and of course, guys, subscribe to keep up to date with the content I am putting out for World of Warcraft here on my YouTube channel. And make sure to hit that bell to keep those notifications on. So thank you so much for stopping by. I do very much appreciate it. As always, I'm Dottz Gaming. I'll see you all in the next one.